late and livid. The jarring shriek of the alarm clock dragged Kevin O'Malley from a dream of sun-drenched beaches and ice-cold beer. 6:47 morgens. Crap. He'd hit snooze one too many times. Again, he shot upright, the tangled bedsheets a temporary prison. Today was court day, testifying in the Diaz assault case. He was the arresting officer, and the assistant DA was relying on him to paint Diaz as a menace to society. A shiver of nervous anticipation, quickly masked by practiced indifference, ran down his spine. Swearing under his breath, he wrestled free of the covers. His feet hit the cold linoleum floor with a slap. He padded to the bathroom, the stale smell of last night's pizza clinging to the air. A quick shower, more of a scalding rinse, barely woke him. He splashed on Old Spice. The pungent sent a temporary shield against the lingering fog in his brain. Downstairs, he fumbled with the coffee maker, his hands clumsy with haste. He poured himself a mug, black, strong enough to jump-start a dead battery. He gulped it down, scalding his tongue, then grabbed his uniform jacket from the back of a chair. He almost forgot his gun, holstered neatly on the bedside table. A quick pat confirmed it was there. The drive to the courthouse was a blur of red lights and frustrated honking. He weaved through traffic, muttering curses at the slow-moving Prius in front of him. Every delay felt like a personal insult. He was already pushing it. Judge Thompson didn't tolerate tardiness. He screeched into a parking spot a block from the courthouse, narrowly avoiding a collision with a delivery van. He slammed the door, grabbed his briefcase, and broke into a jog. The crisp morning air did little to improve his mood. He burst through the courthouse doors, his chest heaving, and barreled down the hallway towards courtroom B. A knot of people milled near the entrance, lawyers in somber suits, worried-looking defendants, and bored court reporters. He pushed his way through, muttering, "Excuse me," without making eye contact. Then it happened. Rounding a corner, he collided with someone. Coffee sloshed from his cup, a hot, brown wave erupting outwards. It soaked the front of a tailored blazer. "Jesus Christ!" Kevin roared, his face flushing crimson. The woman gasped, clutching at her chest. Her eyes, dark and piercing, widened in shock. Kevin took in her appearance in a quick, dismissive sweep. Expensive clothes, but her posture was wrong. Too defensive. Probably some public defender, or worse, one of the defendants. "Watch where you're going, lady," he snapped, his voice laced with irritation. He hadn't even bothered to register her face. He was already running late. The woman stared at the spreading stain on her blazer, her lips pressed into a thin line. "I beg your pardon?" she said, her voice surprisingly calm, but edged with steel. Kevin ignored the calm. He was on a roll now, the adrenaline of his chaotic morning fueling his anger. "Pardon? You're the one standing in the middle of the hallway. Some people just don't have any respect for others," he sneered. He looked around, noticing a few bystanders staring. Embarrassment only amplified his rage. He leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a low, menacing growl. "Probably here for your own court date. Huh? Let me guess, drug possession? Assault? Maybe you decided to skip out on child support?" He allowed himself a cruel smile. "It's always the same, isn't it? You people never learn." The woman's expression hardened. Her eyes narrowed, and a muscle twitched in her jaw. But she didn't speak. Kevin, emboldened by her silence, pressed on. "You think you can just waltz in here and disrupt everyone else? You think the rules don't apply to you? Well, let me tell you something, sweetheart. This isn't your playground. This is a court of law, and you better start showing some respect." He jabbed a finger towards her chest, not quite making contact. The gesture was pure intimidation. A beat of silence hung in the air, thick with tension. Kevin, breathing heavily, waited for the outburst, the denial, the excuses he was so accustomed to hearing. Instead, the woman slowly raised her head, her gaze unwavering. "Are you finished?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper, yet somehow cutting through the noise of the hallway. Kevin blinked, thrown off balance. "Finished? I'm just getting started. Maybe a night in the cells would teach you some manners. Disturbing the peace, resisting arrest. I'm sure I can find something." He puffed out his chest, savoring the power he wielded, the fear he imagined he was instilling. The woman's lips curled into a tight, humorless smile. Disturbing the peace? Resisting arrest? Officer, she said, her voice now resonating with an authority that sent a strange tremor through Kevin. I think you'll find you're the one disturbing the peace. She reached into her purse and withdrew a small, leather-bound card. She held it out to him. Kevin hesitated, then snatched the card from her hand. He glanced at it, his eyes widening in disbelief. He read the words slowly, his blood turning to ice. The card read, Chief of Police Isabella, Izzy Rodriguez. City of... The rest of the words swam before his eyes. He looked up, his face a mask of horror. The woman, no, the chief, was staring at him, her expression unreadable. Is there a problem, Officer O'Malley? She asked, her voice dangerously soft. Kevin swallowed hard, his mouth suddenly dry. He stammered, Chief, I didn't. Chief Rodriguez raised a hand, cutting him off. You didn't know who I was? Perhaps, but you knew enough to make some very interesting assumptions. We'll discuss this later, officer. In my office. She paused, her gaze sweeping over him, cold and assessing. And I suggest you find a way to clean yourself up before you enter that courtroom. You're a disgrace to the uniform. With that, she turned and walked away, leaving Kevin standing alone in the hallway, covered in coffee, his career hanging by a thread. Badge number. The woman seemed to defy physics, absorbing the spill without a flicker. Her face remained a stoic mask. Not even the slightest crinkle marred the corners of her eyes. She simply stood there, dark liquid tracing paths down the severe cut of her blazer, her attention riveted to the Jackson Pollock now adorning Kevin's tie. Officer, she stated, her voice a quiet, unwavering current that sliced through the echoing remnants of his outburst. Badge number, please. Kevin's stomach plummeted. He'd braced himself for hysterics, perhaps a tearful tirade or a rant demanding compensation. Not this unsettling composure. He pawed at his pocket for a useless napkin, attempting to blot the blossoming stain threatening to consume his starched shirt. Look, I said I was sorry, all right? Accidents happen. I'm already late for court. He averted his gaze, fixating on the spreading blemish, a murky premonition of the trouble brewing. Badge number, officer, she reiterated, the quiet authority in her tone now honed to a fine point. He stiffened. Who did she imagine herself to be, barking orders like that? Some pampered busybody angling for a quick settlement? And why should I indulge your curiosity? He retorted, finally meeting her stare. Her eyes, dark and fathomless, held an unnerving depth. He forced himself to stand tall, inflating his chest slightly. Planning to lodge a complaint? I already apologized. What more could you possibly want? Heat prickled his cheeks, a familiar flush of defiance born from years of pent-up resentment. He was a damn good cop. He risked his neck daily. He didn't have time for such trivial nonsense. Perhaps, he continued, sarcasm dripping from his words, you might consider watching where you're going next time. Wouldn't want to ruin another perfectly good article of clothing. He gestured dismissively at her saturated jacket. A twitch betrayed her otherwise still expression, a subtle indication that his words had found their mark. Yet her face remained an impassive shield, unreadable. He found it disquieting. He'd have preferred anger, tears, anything over this unnerving stillness. Listen, he said, softening his tone marginally, though a condescending edge remained. I need to leave. I'm already behind schedule, testifying in an assault case. Real serious business, you know? Not spilled beverages. He waved a dismissive hand. He moved his skirt around her, but she held her ground. An unmoving, silent bulwark. The silence stretched, thick and oppressive, broken only by the drone of the courthouse ventilation. Seriously, he pressed, irritation lacing his voice. Move. Again, he attempted to maneuver past, but she mirrored his movement, effectively blocking his path. He was cornered, held captive by her unwavering gaze and the sheer audacity of her presence. I asked a question, officer, she responded, her voice even, yet laden with an undeniable weight of command. He clenched his fists, knuckles straining. He was close to the breaking point. "You know what?" he erupted, his voice escalating again. "I'm not required to answer to you. You're not my superior. You're just some vexatious civilian chasing a payout. I'm done with this charade." He shoved past her, not gently, and strode purposefully toward the courtroom doors, his back rigid with indignation and a creeping sense of unease. He could feel her eyes boring into his spine. Reaching the doors, he stole a quick glance over his shoulder. She hadn't moved an inch. She remained fixed, coffee still trickling onto the pristine marble floor, her face a blank slate. But there was something different in her gaze now, something that sent a chill crawling up his neck. Not fury, not even irritation. Observation, a detached, calculating study that made him feel like an insect pinned beneath glass. He paused, the weight of her scrutiny heavy on his shoulders. But he couldn't concede now. He couldn't reveal weakness. He pushed through the doors and sought refuge inside the courtroom, the cool air of balm against his burning skin. Unseen, she extracted her phone. Unseen, she swiftly typed a message. Officer drenched in coffee. Refused identification. Awaiting end of testimony. Unseen, she watched him vanish, the barest hint of a smile gracing her lips. A smile that whispered of consequences. A smile that said, "You have absolutely no idea what you've done." The judge's gavel. The courtroom doors, imbued with the gravity of countless judgments, protested with a groan as Kevin nudged them open. The air inside hung thick with the scent of aged oak and solemn pronouncements. A sea of faces turned toward him, each pair of eyes a pinprick of judgment. He felt their disapproval pressing down, an invisible weight far heavier than the lukewarm stain blooming across his chest. Judge Thompson, a raptor on her high perch, radiated power. Her silver hair was sculpted into a tight knot, and her spectacles magnified eyes that missed nothing. The gavel, dormant before her, seemed to vibrate with suppressed authority. Officer O'Malley, her voice, sharp as shattered glass, sliced through the hushed murmurs. "You're late." He swallowed against a suddenly dry throat. "My apologies, Your Honor. There was a complication." He hesitated, unwilling to recount the morning's mortifying episode. A complication? An eyebrow arched above her spectacles, a silent challenge. "This court operates with precision, officer. Delayed justice is a disservice. Your tardiness shows disregard for this principle and for everyone assembled." Heat flooded Kevin's face. He loathed being reprimanded, especially before what felt like the entirety of the city's legal community. He shifted, the squeak of his leather holster the only sound daring to break the silence. "It won't recur, Your Honor," he muttered, avoiding her piercing stare. "Ensure that it doesn't," she retorted, her gaze sweeping over him, lingering on the offending coffee mark. "Furthermore, officer, your presentation is inadequate. Do you grasp the significance of maintaining proper decorum, of projecting a dignified image of law enforcement?" Of course he did. He simply hadn't envisioned needing to be spotless for a pre-shift coffee run. A spark of defiance flickered. The judge was deliberately baiting him. He choked back the retort. Arguing with Judge Thompson was a battle against futility. "Yes, Your Honor. Your behavior reflects not only on you, Officer O'Malley, but on the entire department. We exist to uphold the law, to protect, and to serve. That begins with respect. Respect for the court, respect for due process, and respect for the citizens we serve." She paused, her eyes hardening. "I have received reports, officer, concerning your demeanor. An alleged arrogance, a casual dismissal of protocol. Care to address these concerns?" Kevin's mind spun. Who had lodged these complaints? Was this about a specific case, or a general impression formed over time? He'd always considered himself self-assured, even assertive. Had he overstepped the line into arrogance? "Your Honor, I endeavor to fulfill my duties to the best of my abilities," he offered cautiously. "I am imperfect, but I am dedicated to the welfare of this community." Judge Thompson scrutinized him with an unwavering gaze. Kevin felt beads of sweat forming on his brow. He was perched precariously on the precipice of something dire. His career, his reputation, everything seemed suddenly vulnerable. "Very well, officer," she conceded, her tone softening ever so slightly, though her eyes remained like chips of flint. "I am willing to grant you the benefit of the doubt, but consider this a warning. Actions carry consequences." She adjusted her glasses, her gaze encompassing the courtroom. "Now, before we proceed with the day's calendar, I have an announcement of substantial import." A ripple of murmurs spread through the room. Kevin straightened, his pulse quickening. Was this a continuation of his ordeal? Was she about to publicly excoriate him further? "We are privileged today to welcome our new police chief," Judge Thompson declared, her voice ringing with conviction. "She brings invaluable experience and a fresh perspective. I am confident she will guide our force with integrity and honor." She paused, then shifted her gaze toward the rear of the room. "Please join me in extending a warm welcome to Chief Davis." Kevin followed her gaze, his stomach clenching. He strained, desperate for a glimpse. Who is this Davis? What kind of leader would they be inheriting? Would they be stringent, driven by reform? His future within the precinct might hinge on it. A figure emerged from the back of the courtroom. A woman, tall, poised, radiating a quiet authority that stilled the room. The murmuring subsided, replaced by a collective gasp of astonishment. Kevin stared, his blood turning glacial. It couldn't be, yet undeniably it was. Walking toward the bench, her expression an inscrutable mask, was the woman from the coffee shop. The woman he had drenched in lukewarm brew. The woman whose badge number he had brazenly refused. The woman who had regarded him with such dispassionate eyes. Chief Davis, his new superior, his impending reckoning. A face from the hallway. "Order!" Judge Thompson's gavel cracked through the air, silencing the room like a snapped twig. He peered over his spectacles, his gaze a laser, zeroing in on O'Malley amidst the assembled officers. Before this interruption, I was about to introduce Millwood's new chief of police, Olivia Johnson. A collective murmur rippled through the observers. A breath of fresh air, some mused. Others, like Rodriguez, O'Malley's partner, fidgeted, sensing seismic shifts on the horizon. Thompson inclined his head toward the doorway. "Chief Johnson, if you please." The door eased open, revealing her. O'Malley's luck seized. The woman from the hallway. The recipient of his clumsy attempts at humor. The presumed lost soul he'd brushed off with a dismissive gesture. It was actually her. Chief Olivia Johnson. The floor dropped out from under him. His face went white, then clammy. The courtroom swam, the burnished wood of the benches dissolving into a hazy tableau. This couldn't be real. A particularly cruel jest, perhaps. Olivia Johnson, immaculate in a tailored, navy uniform, entered with fluid grace. Her gaze, sharp and intelligent, scanned the room, betraying no hint of recognition. Or so O'Malley desperately hoped. A subtle quirk at the corner of her mouth, a fleeting suggestion of amusement, sent a jolt of nausea through him. He was finished, professionally, utterly ruined. Rodriguez audibly inhaled beside him. "No way. That's her," she breathed, her voice a mere thread against the ringing in O'Malley's ears. He remained mute, paralyzed, his throat constricted, his tongue a useless weight. Chief Johnson reached the podium, her footsteps echoing softly on the marble. She pivoted to face them, her expression a mask of composure, pure professionalism. "Good morning," she stated, her voice resonating with authority and filling the space. "I am Olivia Johnson, and I am honored to serve as your new chief of police." O'Malley could only stare, riveted by dread. Each recalled word stung like acid. "Maybe you should try reading next time, sweetheart." Lost are we? That arrogant flick of the wrist. The fleeting triumph he'd felt at condescending to a civilian. He squeezed his eyes shut, picturing a rewind button, desperate to undo the morning. Futile. The memory was etched into his mind, a testament to his colossal blunder. The atmosphere in the room palpably thickened. Surprise was yielding to a taut, almost electric anticipation. Officers who had been lounging now sat rigidly, their gazes pinned on the new chief. Unspoken questions hung in the air, a blend of hope and trepidation. Rodriguez gave him a gentle nudge. "Kevin," she murmured, concern etched on her face. "You look like you've seen a ghost." He swallowed, forcing himself to meet her eyes. I need to talk," he rasped, his voice cracking. But before he could elaborate, Chief Johnson began to speak. "I understand that change can be disruptive," she acknowledged, her gaze sweeping the room, pausing almost imperceptibly on O'Malley. He winced inwardly. "But I am confident that, together, we can build a stronger, more equitable police force for Millwood. A force accountable to the community it serves and committed to unbiased justice." Her words were stirring, even inspiring. But all O'Malley could register was the reverberation of his own hubris, his own blind prejudice. He recognized, with a sickening certainty, that his career, his standing, his very future, dangled by a thread, subject to the clemency of the woman he had so carelessly wronged. The ghost wasn't spectral. It was the embodiment of his monumental folly, returned to haunt him. The chief's vision. Olivia Johnson, now Chief Rodriguez, stood tall, her tailored suit a stark contrast to the somewhat rumpled uniforms surrounding her. The courtroom, usually a cacophony of whispers and shuffling feet, was silent, every eye fixed on her. The fluorescent lights glinted off the silver pin on her lapel, the emblem of the Metro City Police Department. "Good morning," she began, her voice clear and resonant, filling the space. "For those of you who don't know me, I am Isabella Rodriguez, your new chief of police." A collective intake of breath rippled through the room. She allowed the moment to hang in the air before continuing. "I understand that change can be unsettling. Some of you may be wondering what my appointment means for the future of this department. Let me be clear." She paused, her gaze sweeping across the assembled officers, lingering for a fraction of a second on Kevin O'Malley, who was desperately trying to become invisible. "My vision for the Metro City Police Department is one of unwavering integrity, accountability, and service to all members of our community. We are here to protect and serve, without bias or prejudice. Every citizen, regardless of their race, religion, gender, or socioeconomic status, deserves to be treated with respect and dignity." A murmur rippled through the room. Kevin felt a bead of sweat trickle down his temple. He kept his eyes fixed on a point just above the chief's head, acutely aware of the weight of her words. He imagined the chief's words had a physical property, like tiny darts, each one homing in on him. He knew she hadn't forgotten their encounter in the hallway. "We will be implementing comprehensive training programs focused on de-escalation techniques, implicit bias awareness, and community policing. We will be strengthening our internal affairs division to ensure that misconduct is addressed swiftly and fairly. And we will be working to build stronger relationships with the communities we serve, fostering trust and understanding." Chief Rodriguez's gaze flicked back to O'Malley. He flinched inwardly. He could feel the heat rising in his cheeks. He pictured himself back in the hallway, his words echoing in his ears, each syllable a hammer blow against his reputation. He hadn't just been disrespectful. He'd been arrogant, condescending, and he now realized with a sickening lurch, utterly clueless. "This will not be an easy process," she continued, her voice softening slightly. "There will be challenges and there will be resistance. But I am confident that, working together, we can build a police department that is worthy of the trust and respect of the people we serve." She paused again, her eyes meeting those of several officers, a silent challenge, a silent promise. "I am open to your questions, your concerns, and your ideas. My door is always open. Let's begin." As the chief concluded her address, a smattering of applause broke out. Kevin remained motionless, his hands clammy. The other officers began to stir, some approaching the chief with hesitant smiles, others whispering amongst themselves. He knew he should probably join the line, feign enthusiasm, but he couldn't bring himself to do it. He slipped out of the courtroom as discreetly as possible, his heart pounding in his chest. He needed to get out, to breathe, to try and make sense of the situation. He found himself back in the same hallway where he'd so carelessly sealed his fate. The air felt thick, suffocating. He leaned against the cool tile wall, closing his eyes. The chief's words reverberated in his mind, each syllable a condemnation. He replayed the hallway scene in his head, every detail sharp and painful. His dismissive wave, his condescending tone, his assumption that he was superior. He had treated her like she was nothing, and now she was everything. He thought of his career, his pension, his reputation, all potentially hanging by a thread, thanks to his own arrogance. He thought of his father, a retired police officer himself, who had always instilled in him the importance of respect and integrity. What did he think? Kevin opened his eyes, the reality of his situation crashing down on him. He was in deep trouble, and he had no one to blame but himself. He straightened his shoulders, took a deep breath, and started walking. He had a lot of work to do. Confrontation averted. The break room hummed with nervous energy. The coffee machine gurgled, each drip a tiny hammer blow against the fragile calm. Kevin O'Malley stood near the chipped Formica counter, nursing a lukewarm cup, his eyes fixed on the doorway. He'd rehearsed his apology a dozen times, each version laced with varying degrees of contrition and self-preservation. Chief Rodriguez, or Johnson, or whatever the hell he was supposed to call her now, emerged from her temporary office, a broom closet masquerading as headquarters until renovations were complete. She moved with a quiet authority that amplified the tension in the room. Her dark suit was impeccable, her expression unreadable. O'Malley swallowed hard and stepped forward. "Chief Rodriguez, could I have a word?" She paused, her gaze sweeping over him with the same cool assessment she directed at the entire precinct during her address. "Officer O'Malley, I'm rather pressed for time. Perhaps later. It's important, ma'am. It concerns our previous encounter." He felt a bead of sweat trickle down his temple. "Indeed. And I assure you, officer, I haven't forgotten a single detail." However, she glanced at her watch, a sleek silver timepiece that seemed to mock his own outdated digital model. "I have a meeting with the mayor in 15 minutes. Schedule an appointment with my secretary. We'll discuss it then." With that, she turned and strode towards the exit, leaving O'Malley standing there, coffee sloshing over the rim of his cup. The break room exploded in a flurry of whispers the moment she was gone. He could feel the weight of their eyes on him, a mixture of pity, schadenfreude, and morbid curiosity. Maria Rodriguez, usually a beacon of sunshine in the otherwise grim atmosphere of the precinct, approached him cautiously. Her brow was furrowed with concern. "Kevin, you okay?" He forced a smile that felt like cracking plaster. "Just peachy, Maria. Just peachy." He dumped the remaining coffee in the sink, the clatter echoing too loudly in the sudden silence. The rumors started circulating faster than a virus. Every hushed conversation, every averted glance, seemed to confirm his worst fears. He heard snippets, disciplinary action, internal affairs, early retirement, each one a nail in the coffin of his career. Later that afternoon, he was called to a domestic disturbance, a screaming match between a couple fueled by cheap beer and shattered dreams. As he wrestled the belligerent husband into the back of the patrol car, the man spat at him. "You're a disgrace, O'Malley, just like the rest of them." He slammed the door shut, the man's words echoing the whispers he'd heard all day. He drove back to the precinct, the flashing lights of the patrol car reflecting in his rearview mirror like accusing eyes. Back at the station, the atmosphere was even thicker. A group of officers huddled near the bulletin board, their voices dropping to a conspiratorial murmur as he approached. As he drew closer, he caught the tail end of their conversation. "Heard she's cleaning house. About time someone took him down a peg." He glared at them, but they quickly dispersed, their faces carefully blank. Only a few lingered, offering smirks and barely concealed laughter. He overheard Johnson near the water cooler. "Maybe it's time for some of us to retire, Kev." He retreated to his desk, feeling like a pariah. Even the paperwork seemed to mock him, the endless forms a testament to his failures. He stared at the picture of his daughter on his desk. Her smiling face was a painful reminder of everything he stood to lose. He wanted to be the hero in her eyes, not the disgraced cop who was run out of town. He picked up the phone and dialed his lawyer. He needed to prepare for the worst, even if it meant fighting dirty. He had a family to protect, a reputation to salvage. He would not go down without a fight. He pressed the phone to his ear, the dial tone a hollow echo of his mounting anxiety. Accountability. The precinct briefing room throbbed with a harsh drone of overhead lights, their glare bouncing off a sea of somber faces. Tension, thick and cloying, pressed down on everyone. O'Malley, usually radiating cocky assurance, sat hunched, his gut a tangled knot. He stared at flaking paint, avoiding all eyes, yet convinced every gaze was a burning brand on his skull. Chief Johnson stood at the podium, an island of calm authority. Her expertly tailored dark suit accentuated her rigid bearing. When she'd entered, a hush had fallen, punctuated only by the wheezing ventilation. Her gaze, sharp and assessing, swept across the room, pausing imperceptibly on O'Malley. "Good morning," she began, her voice clear, amplified by the room's acoustics rather than a microphone. "As your new chief, I want to outline some core principles that will govern our actions moving forward. Principles that are, unequivocally, not up for debate." O'Malley fidgeted. A flush crept up his neck, prickling his skin. A successful police force rests on the bedrock of respect and accountability. Johnson continued, her tone resolute. "Respect for the citizens we protect, respect for each other, and respect for the oath we've sworn." She paused, her eyes traversing the room. Accountability demands ownership of successes and failures. It demands acknowledging our mistakes, learning from them, and striving for constant improvement. It means adhering to the highest ethical standards on duty and off. Maria Rodriguez, a few rows ahead, kept her focus riveted on Johnson, her expression unreadable. She'd seen O'Malley's behavior firsthand. The condescending remarks, the flagrant arrogance, the veiled insults directed toward minorities. She'd always swallowed her objections, fearing the consequences. Now, listening to Johnson, a spark of hope flickered within. Perhaps the tide was turning. "We are guardians," Johnson stressed, her voice gaining strength. "We are entrusted with significant power, and that power carries immense responsibility. We must never forget that we answer to the people. We must never abuse our authority. We must never betray the sacred trust placed in our hands." A wave of mortification engulfed O'Malley. Each word felt like a calculated strike. He imagined whispers, nudges, accusing stares boring into him. The room seemed to shrink, the air growing stale with each syllable. He longed for oblivion, to vanish from sight. "Misconduct will not be tolerated," Johnson declared, her tone leaving no room for doubt. "Anyone who violates the public's confidence will be held liable. Anyone whose actions compromise this department's integrity will face repercussions." Maria Rodriguez risked a covert glance at O'Malley. His complexion was ashen, his jaw tight. A sliver of sympathy pricked her, swiftly followed by resentment. He was reaping what he sowed. Johnson concluded with an unwavering pronouncement. "We are here to serve and safeguard. We are here to uphold the law. We are here to foster trust and fortify our community. Let us commit to these ideals, and together build a police force we can all be proud to represent." The room thundered with applause, but O'Malley barely registered it. He felt adrift, exposed, his career hanging precariously. As the officers streamed out of the briefing room, he remained rooted, his gaze fixed on the scuffed linoleum. The fluorescent hum seemed to taunt him, a relentless reminder of his disgrace. Maria Rodriguez hesitated as she passed. She considered offering a word of comfort, perhaps, or even a cautionary note. But the words died in her throat. She offered a curt nod and moved toward the exit, leaving O'Malley to his shame. The acrid scent of disinfectant lingered, mingling with the oppressive tension, a stark reminder of the arduous path ahead. Training and transformation. The precinct PA blared, Olivia Johnson's voice cutting through the usual din with its crisp authority. Effective immediately, all officers will attend mandatory sensitivity and bias training. Mr. Jamal Davis, a highly regarded voice in the community and an expert on diversity and inclusion, will lead this program aimed at bolstering understanding and cultivating a more inclusive environment. A wave of disgruntled murmurs swept the room. A chorus O'Malley joined, his own contribution laced with a sharper, more acrid note. Sensitivity training. The irony stung. His name, he saw, was plastered to the assignment sheet, placing him in Group A, under Davis's direct purview. A sour taste rose in his throat. He'd sooner face a disciplinary review. The training room possessed all the charm of a dentist's office, the buzzing fluorescent lights casting a harsh, clinical glare. Jamal Davis occupied the front, his lean frame radiating an unexpected weariness that hinted at battles fought and won. O'Malley recognized him from news segments. Davis was a perpetual activist, a thorn in the side of authority. Now it seemed he embodied it, at least within these sterile walls. Davis's gaze swept the room, pausing, perhaps pointedly, on O'Malley. "Good morning," he began, his tone measured. "I'm aware many of you harbor reservations. My aim isn't to lecture, but to facilitate understanding, to illuminate the reverberating effects of your actions, regardless of intent." The initial session drowned them in a deluge of jargon. Microaggressions, unconscious bias, intersectionality. O'Malley felt his mental defenses erecting themselves, brick by weary brick. He'd always considered himself a just officer, equitable in his dealings. He treated everyone the same, with a healthy dose of skepticism. Prejudice wasn't his problem. He simply reacted. During the coffee break, Davis approached. "Officer O'Malley, isn't it?" A curt nod was all O'Malley offered. "Davis, I've glanced over your file," Davis continued, his tone even. "I gather you've encountered some recent difficulties." "O'Malley, defendant." "Difficulties?" That's putting it mildly. "This isn't punitive, officer," Davis clarified, his expression unwavering. "It's developmental, though development necessitates candor." "Candor?" O'Malley scoffed, disbelief coloring his tone. "You think I'm being disingenuous? Are you not?" Davis countered, his eyes locking onto O'Malley's with unwavering intensity. The subsequent week involved role-playing scenarios. O'Malley found himself partnered with a young patrolwoman, Maria Rodriguez. The situation? A traffic stop involving a black youth. O'Malley, in the role of the officer, adopted an immediate, almost instinctively aggressive tone, demanding ID, probing about potential drug use. Maria, portraying the teenager, recoiled, her voice escalating with each perceived accusation. "Why are you singling me out?" she challenged. "Is it because I'm black?" A familiar surge of annoyance coursed through O'Malley. "I pulled you over because your taillight's out," he retorted, sharper than he intended. Davis stepped in. "Officer O'Malley, what assumptions are you operating under?" "Assumptions?" O'Malley repeated, his voice gaining volume. "I'm not making any assumptions. I'm performing my duty." "Are you entirely certain?" Davis probed. "Or are you reacting to a pre-existing construct, a deeply ingrained stereotype?" O'Malley glared, simmering beneath the surface. The room fell silent, every eye fixed upon him. The desire to bolt, to tell Davis to take his training and, well, he suppressed it, knowing the consequences. His career teetered on the precipice. Later that week, Davis assigned a reflective writing piece, a detailed account of an instance where bias might have influenced their actions, consciously or unconsciously. O'Malley confronted the empty page for what felt like an eternity. Memories flooded him. Countless encounters, scores of arrests. He replayed the faces of those he'd detained, interrogated, sometimes even strong-armed. Were they all guilty? Likely. But had he treated them with unwavering impartiality? He could no longer claim that with conviction. He pictured the courtroom, the woman whose fate he now depended on, the scorn he'd projected, the dismissive way he'd addressed her. He hadn't recognized a human being. He'd seen an impediment. And then he began to write. The words trickled out at first, before surging into a torrent of shame and regret. He dissected his assumptions, his ingrained prejudices, his underlying fears. He recounted his father, a hard-bitten cop who instilled in him a stark, binary view of the world. He articulated the relentless pressure to conform, to assimilate, to be accepted as one of the brotherhood. He wrote until his hand cramped, until the page bore the weight of his confessions. Spent, yet strangely unburdened, he surveyed his work. He couldn't definitively claim transformation, but he was beginning to grasp the sheer magnitude of what remained to be learned. He surrendered the paper to Davis, avoiding eye contact. Davis accepted it, his expression inscrutable. "Thank you, Officer O'Malley," he said, his voice neutral. "This is a meaningful beginning. Redemption." "O'Malley, report to the auditorium immediately." Olivia Johnson's voice lacerated the airwaves. "O'Malley now." Kevin's mouth went desert dry. The reckoning. He'd been suspended in anxious limbo ever since Jamal's diversity training, the shadow of his past transgressions looming large. He smoothed his uniform, the starched fabric now a suffocating barrier. The auditorium's silence slammed into him like a wall as he entered. Every gaze converged. Fellow officers, a mosaic of curiosity and condemnation. And at the front, Chief Rodriguez, her face an inscrutable mask. Jamal Davis, seated beside her, offered a subtle, encouraging dip of his chin. His boots echoed through the vast space as he made his way to the stage. Shame prickled his skin, a familiar heat creeping up his neck. He gripped the podium, knuckles bone white. "Chief Rodriguez," he began, his voice a shaky instrument. "Officers, esteemed members of the community, I'm here to deliver an unreserved apology." A pause, a lungful of heavy air. "My conduct was reprehensible, disrespectful, and utterly incompatible with the values we uphold as a department and the standards I should embody." He met the chief's gaze. "Chief, I'm deeply ashamed of the disrespect I displayed. It was not only unprofessional, but steeped in prejudice. I was grievously wrong and now grasp the harm I propagated, not just to you, but to the community we're sworn to protect." His eyes scanned the room, connecting with the officers who'd once been his brothers and sisters in arms. "To my colleagues, I know I failed you. I tarnished the badge. I only hope that, with time, I can regain your esteem." A low murmur rippled through the assembly. He'd steeled himself for jeers, accusations, perhaps even a mass exodus. His quiet felt almost oppressive. Chief Rodriguez advanced, her expression resolute. "Officer O'Malley, your contrition is acknowledged. However, deeds outweigh sentiments. You've completed sensitivity training, and Mr. Davis, I trust, has equipped you with the tools for profound introspection and lasting change." Her gaze swept across the assembled. "This department stands firm in its commitment to treating all members of our community with dignity and respect. Prejudice and bias have no sanctuary here. We will not countenance it." Turning back to Kevin, she said, "Officer O'Malley, I am extending to you an opportunity for redemption, a chance to prove your dedication to growth. We've struggled to forge connections with the youth in this precinct, especially in light of recent incidents. I'm assigning you to volunteer as a mentor at the community center." A wave of surprise washed over the room. Not the punitive action they'd anticipated. Something far more radical. "You will engage with young people, listen to their anxieties, and demonstrate that the police are guardians, not specters of fear. This will be arduous. It will demand patience, empathy, and a sincere desire to connect with individuals who may reasonably distrust you. Are you prepared to accept this assignment, officer?" Kevin gaped, blindsided. He'd girded himself for suspension, demotion, even dismissal. This was a curveball, a genuine chance to atone. Jamal's revelations echoed in his mind, the uncomfortable truths he'd been forced to confront. He recalled his writing assignment, the stark honesty he'd laid bare. He pictured the faces of the young men he'd briefly encountered at the community center, their eyes a complex blend of yearning and skepticism. "Yes, Chief," he affirmed, his voice now firm. "I accept." The ensuing months proved to be the crucible of Kevin's career. He poured countless hours into the community center, shooting hoops, assisting with schoolwork, and most importantly, listening. The teenagers initially held him at arm's length, faces shuttered, eyes wary. He was the man, the adversary, an emblem of everything they resented. He refused to force the issue. He simply persevered, day after day, absorbing their experiences, their frustrations, their ambitions. He gained insight into their struggles with poverty, endemic violence, a system that seemed stacked against them. Gradually, painstakingly, the barriers crumbled. A tentative smile here, an inquisitive question there. He initiated activities, a basketball tournament, a movie night, a field trip to a local museum. He collaborated with local businesses to host job skills workshops. He learned their names, their narratives, their aspirations. He witnessed their potential, their fortitude, their intrinsic worth. And he saw, mirrored in their eyes, the man he aspired to become. One evening, a young man named Deshawn approached him. "Officer O'Malley," he began, "can I ask you something?" Kevin girded himself. He'd grown to respect Deshawn, an intelligent and articulate young man who'd been particularly resistant to him. "Of course, Deshawn," he said. "What's on your mind? Why are you doing this?" Deshawn pressed, his eyes probing Kevin's soul. "Why are you really doing this?" Kevin drew a deep breath. "Because I screwed up, Deshawn. I made mistakes. I inflicted pain, and I want to set things right. I want to show you and everyone else that I'm capable of change, that we are all capable of change." Deshawn nodded slowly. "I get it," he said. "I still don't trust all cops, but I trust you, Officer O'Malley." A surge of emotion coursed through Kevin. It wasn't absolution, not yet, but it was a beginning, a beacon of hope. He persisted in his work at the community center, his dedication unwavering. He evolved into a mentor, a confidant, a respected presence in the lives of these young men. He began orchestrating community gatherings, uniting residents and law enforcement in a spirit of mutual understanding and collaboration. Kevin O'Malley remained a police officer, but he was no longer the same man who had stood before Chief Rodriguez on that fateful day. He was a man who had confronted his inner demons, acknowledged his failings, and committed himself to forging a brighter tomorrow. He was a man well along the road to true redemption.